Yes, there was. My stepfather was very abusive, mostly verbally. He had the tendency to talk out of the left side of his neck about certain things that happened, things that he wanted to go a certain way. And he was very, very, very aggressive in the way that he talked. A lot of what happened was because of him having to lose my mom to domestic violence, one of the worst hurts in the world. It's different when you just lose a parent naturally, but for their life to be taken, especially to be shot and to be set on fire, that thing hurts at a depth that nobody can never explain. But the manifestation of the verbal abuse became more aggressive, and not only did he verbally abuse her, he was financially abused her, he was a physical abuser. He has taken many times where he has hit her, or as I remember the time when he even hit her with the butt of a gun. So there are so many things that he has done, and that right there alone was enough to cause us to stand up for domestic violence, not only from what my mom has gone through, but for others who are going through. Remember that there is help and there is hope. If you're ever in a domestic violence relationship, your first step, get out. We're here to help.
Yes, there were many early signs of domestic violence in our home. One of the first memories I have is witnessing a disagreement between my mom and her then boyfriend because they weren't married at the time. He became enraged and flipped over a coffee table, which was scary and frightening for me as a child. We left immediately and eventually returned, and that became a recurring pattern. I had a mix of fear, confusion, as I struggled to understand why we kept having to return to an environment that seemed so unstable.
One of the most important lessons I've learned is the importance of early intervention. I've realized that abuse often begins subtle with emotional manipulation or control long before it turns physical. And so it's crucial to trust your instincts and reach out for support early on. I also realized that victims often feel trapped for many reasons, whether it's out of fear, love, or even financial dependency, and that leaving can be much, much harder to peers to outsiders. My mother's death deeply impacted how I approach relationships. I'm much more aware of the importance of mutual respect, emotional safety, and communication as well. I've been very cautious about who I let into my life, but at the same time, I've grown to value deep, meaningful connections that foster emotional security. I also find myself more empathetic and supportive in relationships. I'm always aware that everyone could be going through their own battles.
Growing up as a child in a home where domestic violence took place was hard. There were times when my grades started to decline. I was starting to have social issues, and also there was a period of time in my life where it was difficult for me to sleep throughout the night. I was afraid to fall asleep because most of the abuse, most of the fights happened during the night, during a time where everyone was asleep. Through dealing with that, as a child, especially in the South, you're told to not that what goes on at home stays at home. So there was nobody for me to reach out to give me any advice to help me with the feelings that I had, with the things that I were dealing with. So it was very difficult as a child dealing with that. And throughout that, the relationship with my mom, I wouldn't say it was 100% perfect. It was not. We never got a chance to discuss what I witnessed as a kid, what we went through as a family. I never got a chance to talk about that with her. because, of course, those moments were stolen. So she was very loving, she was very sweet person. She would do anything for anybody, very patient and very dependable, and I miss her dearly.
How did Mom's death impact my decisions and relationships moving forward? To me, honestly, it wasn't just her death. It was her life. I watched my mom make some decisions that I didn't understand. I watched her live a lifestyle that she was taught to live by the church and how to be the godly wife. But I also saw that the church didn't address abuse in a way that was accurate, in a way that was safe. So I watched my mom's life, and I watched the lives of many of the people around me, and I realized I had to learn how to live life differently so that I wouldn't get their results. So when she died, that was the push I needed to actively engage in becoming a different person and encouraging others around me to engage different belief systems, different practical policies when it came to engaging in healthy relationships. I couldn't be in a healthy relationship without being a healthy person. So that was the first and foremost. The biggest push was to not only do it for me, but to get the word out and share with others how to avoid these pitfalls. Some of the things that we held as truth that weren't actually true, I was able to challenge and create a better way of thinking, a better way of living, not only in the aspect of not being in an abusive romantic relationship, but creating healthy relationships with family, with friends, with coworkers, in business. In order to do all of those things, I had to take a look at how healthy I was as an individual, and I used my platform and my professional career to teach others. So I owe it, a lot of who I am to Lucille Stewart Ward and the lessons I learned from her, not only of what to do, but also learned what not to do from her. And I appreciate those lessons because they kept me from experiencing things that statistically I was at a high risk of experiencing. So she was a light. She was an example in more ways than one. I'm grateful for the lessons. I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to call her mom, but I'm also grateful that I got to learn from the mistakes. That's something she would always say, learn from my mistakes so you don't have to walk the same path. And I'm grateful that I learned from those things, and I'm still learning, and I'm helping others to learn as well.
Losing my mom was probably the hardest thing I ever had to get through. Being the youngest, 11, I really don't remember how I felt. I do remember wanting to know why, but of course I didn't get that answer. Having friends and loved ones around helped me a lot getting through those dark moments. Later in my teenage years, I learned how to play the piano, and I used music to express my emotions, how I felt, and that helped out a lot. If you're listening, if you're dealing with grief or trying to go through grief can express in so many different ways. You just do what you can do and be positive to get through it. And don't forget, you're not alone.
Coping with my mother's death was extremely difficult for me. I was one of the 9 children who attended church but didn't have a real relationship with God. At one point, I thought I was losing my mind. The smell of smoke would send me into a panic. The mental anguish, all of the emotions were overwhelming for me. At that time, I hadn't shared with any of my family of being sexually abused by him. And I couldn't help but wonder if I had said something to my mom, if I had confided in her that these things were going on, if she had left sooner and would have avoided this type of situation. So I eventually turned to God. I gave my life to Christ, and that was a new beginning for me. I remember being in prayer one night, and God gave me a revelation. Here I am thinking that, if I told her sooner, if I said something to her, then she would have left and maybe she wouldn't have been murdered. But, I was reminded that if she had stayed, how would my relationship with my mom have been? It would have destroyed our relationship if I had confided in her and then she still stayed. I remember going through so many different emotions. One night in prayer, I had been crying out to God and asking Him to heal my mind and heal my heart. And He spoke to me very clearly, and He said, every time you ask me to heal you and I bring it up to the surface, you retreat and sweep it back under the rug. And He told me that I really want to heal you, and the next time I bring it up to the surface, don't sweep it under the rug, because I want to wipe it off. And that was a new beginning for me. There are so many things that came, so many different testimonies that came out of my mother's death. And the one that's more profound to me is, in spite of everything that I went through, in spite of everything that I experienced, I gave my life to Christ. God got my attention through the death of my mother. And I have no sad song to sing because of that. That was the beginning of a turning point in my life.
What I would say to someone who is currently experiencing domestic violence is, I know you're being told to get out. I know you hear statistics and stories and tragedies and you see it happening to other people. But I also know that you struggle emotionally. You struggle with your feelings for that person. You struggle with the fear of starting over or being alone or being by yourself and not having support or not having the money to start over with. And those are legitimate fears. So I would encourage you to educate yourself from where you are. You may be in the place where you're contemplating if you need a change. You may need to educate yourself on what domestic violence is or is not, what the laws are in your area, what the protocols are in regards to arrest and talking to someone about restraining orders and those kinds of things, so that you know what you need to do and how to get those things done. Educate yourself by connecting to resources like your local domestic violence shelter or advocacy group, connecting to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, so that you can get the necessary information. Because not all change happens overnight. Everybody doesn't get out on the first sign of trouble. Not everyone figures it out or has a plan. So that's something else you need to think about. Think about a safety plan. Think about what you need to do to get to safety for yourself, and if you have children, for your children, because that's a necessary part of the process. It's not as easy as, all right, I decided to leave and I'm out, because we all know that that's when violence tends to escalate, and that can be the most dangerous time for someone who is leaving an abusive relationship. So don't let anyone push you to moving too fast, but do not stay stagnant. Get the information you need, arm yourself with the necessary tools, get the support and help that is out there for you. If nothing else, my family is here. We will do what we can to assist you in getting to a place of safety and stability for yourself, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and as well as physically.
One of the things that I want others to remember about my mom is the fact that she never gave up hope. I remember her before death, being enrolled in college again. And to me, that means that she was still looking forward to the future. And I know a lot of people deal with some really hard life situations, but I want you to look at my mom's story and find that she never stopped. She never gave up hope, and she always looked toward the future. So when you remember my mom, I want you to remember that she never gave up hope.